welcome all of you to this conversation. We wouldn't call it a debate, but conversation about leadership in business and sustainability. Today, we have a guest, Jeroen Smit. Jeroen, welcome. And Jeroen is a journalist and writer, and maybe some of you read one of their books. The last book is about the company Unilever, a big multinational, of course, and one of the CEOs, Paul Polman, was looked at by you, and you wrote the book about his struggle within the company to make the company more sustainable and how he was doing that and how he did that.
Okay, thank you for your introduction, Harry. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I'm pleased to be here. Usually my audience consists of 40-plus managers, controllers, accountants, my generation. And the thing is with my generation, they love to hear about circularity and sustainability and all that stuff, but it's very difficult for them to change. You know why? Because if you're 40-plus, you've decided either it's Elmex or Colgate or whatever you use, and you will never ever change again, because that's what you've decided upon, and that's what you're used to. Those are the spreadsheets you know, so it's very difficult for you to really make a change. And therefore, I'm very happy to be in front of this audience. One other thing about my generation, about humans in general, recent research shows that if you find your beliefs being confirmed, so if you have a certain belief, this is the way I work, this is the way I'm successful, the moment you find reassurance, it's confirmed, your brain produces dopamine. Did you know that? So being confirmed in what you believe is right gives you a good feeling. So this is an extra reason to stick to your own beliefs. And it's very difficult to change for a 40-plus leader and to move from the familiar status quo zone which they operate in, most of them do, to a more adaptive transition zone where you need to start to think about things in another way. So you can make a difference. And it's also important, another research I found only recently, that if you, and I hope for you, because your generation, you have to do it, you have to make the big changes, the moment you start to work and be inspired every day in your work from your inner beliefs, what you really think is important in life. Some people use the word purpose, but if you are capable to start working in an environment which connects to your inner beliefs, everybody wants to work there, right? Do we all agree that we want to work there and not somewhere else? I want to check with you, this is important. You go day to day, you spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You want to work in an environment which connects to what you really believe is important, right? Yeah. Okay, fine, great. I needed that. The thing is, research shows you will feel up to 5 times better than all the poor souls, my generation, still working in this old spreadsheet world where they're really convinced that this is the way it works, this is the system, I'm not happy with it because it's not sustainable, it's not circular, but this is the way it works and this is the way I'm used to work. So the poor souls, my generation, they still stick to the old work and they have to survive in a world which is generated by, which is dominated by winners and losers. Now, something about myself. I did business school in Groningen. You all know Groningen? I'm one of the first, actually. It was brand new in 1981. I was the second year where the MBA, Master in Business Administration, was sort of imported from the United States, which they have many MBAs over there. And I was one of the first bedrijfskunde MBA students in Groningen. And after this study, I was not really interested. I just basically did it because I wanted to be a student. I really enjoyed student life. But I managed to graduate. And then I became a consultant. Anybody here having any fantasies about becoming a consultant? Oh, not yet. That's okay. Well, try to stay away from that scene. I became a strategy consultant at the age of 24. It's weird, it's really weird. In an ICT consultancy. Anyway, I made a lot of money. I drove a brand new lease car in those days. My parents were proud and I was very successful and extremely unhappy. Why? Because I didn't understand why I was making all that money. I was producing reports, talking, interviewing, thinking about stuff, but I couldn't find, you know, consultants are being hired by companies which need some sort of advice, but they already know what they want, but they need a consultant to confirm, and then they can say to their employees, we have to fire 20%, the consultant has made the calculations, all that. So I was very unhappy, and I decided, so what is it I really want to do in this life? And it's about writing. So two friends of mine at the time said, why don't you become a journalist and work for het Financiële Dagblad? You know het Financiële Dagblad? It's the Dutch Financial Times, sort of. The Financial Times is the Financial Times, but in Holland we have het Financiële Dagblad. We'll cover Paul Polman. That's my third book. It's about the CEO called Paul Polman. He was the CEO of Unilever from 2009 to 2019, and he was special. The first time I met him was in 2011 or so. When he gave a speech for a big audience, he would start off with, tonight, and you have to imagine Paul Polman, CEO, Unilever. You know Unilever? Multinational, 53 billion turnover, listed in New York, London, Amsterdam, huge. Dove, Knorr, Magnum, 500 brands, fast-moving consumer goods. We all know enough now about Unilever? Yeah. They produce over 200 billion products per year. It's big. It's really big. Anyway, so he became CEO, and from 2010 or so, he started giving speeches, and he would start off, and you have to imagine this room was filled with bankers, accountants, CEOs, whatever, men in suits, mostly men. Again, we'll get back to that later. It's a big issue. And he would say to his audience, listen, tonight, CEO of Unilever, he would say, tonight 800 million people will go to bed hungry. Tomorrow, they will go to bed hungry again. It's our responsibility to solve this issue. And I had never, ever heard a CEO of such a huge company, I mentioned, listed, focused on profitability, explaining why Unilever should become a force for good, as he calls it. Focus on long-term sustainability. So what he did, he built his Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. We'll get into that later. And with a long-term ambitions. Halving the impact on the environment, helping 1 billion people improving their hygienic living circumstances, getting millions of farmers, putting them out of poorness, giving them a sustainable living wage. So Paul Polman, he inspired me to write my third book, and we'll get into that later, using your questions as a lead. So what I want to use my last 5 or 10 minutes or so for now, I'm looking at Harry, he's already becoming a little bit nervous. What I want to tell you about, just so when I am talking to my generation, right? That's what I do most of the time. I try to teach them something. I try to inspire them with the lessons I've learned from, especially my last book, but also the books before those books. As I said before, these are all the same type of men. And I give them three simple lessons. One, make a plan for 2035. So that's one extreme. Start having a fantasy about the company you're leading or you're part of or responsible for or whatever. Try to envision where this company will be in 2035. Most of them have never, ever done the exercise. For them, 2035 is, you know, we have to be profitable this year, this quarter, maybe even this year. We have to fight competition. So if they talk about strategy, it's about maybe 2 years ahead. So this is very important to trigger with them. Because when they start thinking about 2035, what will they meet? What will they be confronted with? The big issues of today, right? The lack of biodiversity, inclusiveness, climate change, those big issues, those huge issues which are being... the moment you start thinking about 2035, you start to feel responsible for those. That's actually what Ray Anderson also did. That's what it all started with, taking a long-term perspective. Most of them find this incredibly difficult. So that's the first message. The other message is, the second message, if you have to hire a colleague in your board, in your team. You don't only talk about every management team, the moment you have to hire a new colleague, hire the other. What do I mean by that? In my 3 books, it's repetitive, it's something which keeps coming back. The moment you are successful as a leader, what happens? I'm challenging you here. What happens? Try to imagine you are a successful in business and you make a career like this. Every 2 years you make a promotion. Tuck, 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 tuck. We are 20 years ahead now. What happens? What happens in your head?
You start becoming convinced that you're right.
Thank you very much. You start to have this feeling, well, I am special. I am special. You know why I'm your boss? Because I know it better than you. Otherwise, you would have been my boss. Rijkman Groening, ABN AMRO, Rijkman Groening in those days, an extremely smart banker, extremely smart. He would enter an audience like this, he would step on the stage, and sometimes he would almost say it, but most of the time, but anyway, he would radiate a message like, there's 0% chance, 0, that any of you is smarter than I am. So what shall we do? Shall I listen to you? Or is it maybe a good idea that you listen to me? Right? So let me explain it one more time. That's the type of leadership which is still quite dominant in business, especially because people start to believe they are special. And the most dramatic thing which can happen to them, and I've described it several times in my 3 books, by the way, is that they win a prize. They are announced Entrepreneur of the Year, Manager of the Year, CEO of the Year, CFO of the Year. Yeah, right? I don't know what happens then, but I know for sure in their brain something happens like, I already thought of myself as being special, but now it's official. What happens then? It happens with all my 3 main characters. Kees van Hoeven, I mentioned, Ahold, Rijkman Groening, but also Paul Polman, the same thing. Because it's a success story to some extent. He lost it also. He became a priest, an environmental Jesus. So he also lost it. So the moment this happens, then you start to believe you can walk over water. You start to believe that normal laws are for normal people only. I'm not normal. So what helps is diversity. What helps is hire the other. This is very important. But I'm going to check with you. The moment you have to write a paper, right? You have to do it with another student. Sometimes you have to work together, right? Be honest now. How often do you try to find and work together with someone else? Not a friend, not somebody you understand, looks like you. Be honest. You always feel like you feel attracted to somebody who is more or less like you are. You speak the same language. The moment you connect, you like 2 dolphins in the water when you talk, right? And it feels very comfortable. Let's do this together. Are you learning from the other person? No, because he or she is like you are. You have to start training this now. The moment you are capable of inviting the other, which could be boy, girl, could be another background, age, just the other. Hire the other. Most of them are not capable of doing so. I've been editor-in-chief myself, 1998, a long time ago, of a weekly magazine, sort of Dutch Business Week, and I was allowed, to be very honest, I have to be transparent about this, to hire 2 people in my editorial management team. And actually what I did back then, was my last job, then I became ZZP'er afterwards, so it's very clear. What I did in those days was hiring 2 times Jeroen Smit. So we have 3 times Jeroen Smit in the managing team, and we can really go fast. Is this smart? No, it's not. It's short-term smartness, but in the long term, if you really want to grow, you have to hire the other, invite the other. It is so difficult to do so. So that's my second lesson. First lesson, make a plan for 2035. Second lesson is hire the other. From now on, almost impossible for most men, especially men. And then the last message is stop, and this is more difficult to translate, but stop being an actor when you're at work. And I started off with this message, at the moment you can work being inspired from what is really inside of you, what you really think is important, and most people actually want to create a better world. They feel responsible for taking care, right? So the moment you start working from this inner purpose, if you like the word, then you don't go to work as an actor. And I'll explain. I thought about maybe I can help you, and then I'll be with you, Harry, and with your questions. But it's an important thing. And the thing is, so I'm excited to talk to 20, 22, 24, whatever age you are, young people. I'm always excited because I know sometimes you can make a difference there instead of my own generation. I already explained that. So 10 years ago or so, maybe 12 years already ago, I learned this important lesson. I was standing in front of 100 fiscalists. You know what a fiscalist is? Fiscal advisor, right? They advise big companies trying to avoid paying taxes. This is important. It's not illegal. We have a Dutch saying, het mag, maar deugt niet. It's allowed, but it doesn't, how do you explain that? It's formally allowed. Huh? It doesn't feel good. Sorry? It doesn't feel right. It deugt gewoon niet. It's not okay. It's allowed, but it's not okay. Maybe that's the best translation. It's allowed, okay. Legally, it's allowed, but it's not okay. Avoiding taxes. Why would you avoid taxes? Anyway, so that's what the fiscalists do. There's a group of 100 fiscalists, and I asked them this question. It was a spontaneous setting. And I asked them the question, who believes paying taxes is a matter of being civilized? Who believes paying taxes, right, is a matter of being civilized, being taken care of. Een kwestie van beschaving was the Dutch. A matter of civilization. I'll tell you, 100 hands raised, they all raised their hands. And I congratulated them. I said, wow, 100 fiscalists. I'm so excited that you really feel that it is a matter of civilization to pay taxes, because taxes, you need taxes to pay education, safety, healthcare. That's a matter. That's proof that you. Now, so they were all happy with my applauding them. And then in those days there was this Greek crisis. Remember the crisis in Greece? They had lied about taxes, and there was many different big issues. Some people were even worried about the euro, and it was huge. It was a big issue. And there was an article in, I think it was in The Guardian that morning or that week, and they, as investigative journalists, they found out that in Greece there's over 1,000 families, over 1,000 families which haven't paid any taxes since World War II. And they're extremely rich, extremely rich. Hundreds of billions, sometimes billionaires. Think Onassis, think those kind of incredible wealth. And they haven't paid taxes since the world. And so I saw this audience and they were all nodding their heads. Said, yeah, that's what they knew, of course. That's okay. I said, okay, imagine tomorrow one of those Greek billionaires calls you. Huh? You're a specialist on avoiding taxes, right? You know why he or she is calling. Who? Raise hands again. Will tell this person, great, I would love to have you as a client, but one thing you need to know, I think paying taxes is a matter of civilization. Who? How many hands were raised now? Well, one or two. And in the middle of the room, this guy stood up, my age, my background sort of. He said, listen, Smit, I'll explain it to you. And he was standing like this. He said, I'll explain it to you. Listen, as a father, as a Dutchman, as a father, as a friend, as a human being, I really believe paying taxes is a matter of civilization. I'm proud of this country. I love to pay 52%. And I tell it to my children, healthcare, education, safety, infrastructure, great. But then he moved his weight from this leg to the other leg. And he said, but when I'm at my office, I need to make money, right? That's the system we are in. So I have to work with this guy and make money because I have to spend for the education of the children and the house and the mortgage and all that. So what he actually did, he made a difference between his personal integrity, purpose, what you really think is important, and his professional integrity. And that's what we all do to some extent. There's always this tension. What you really think is important as a human being, and then what you do because, oh, this is the system, that's my boss, the boss tells me to do this, so... You see, and what I believe is your future as a human being, but also as a professional, is about trying to combine the two, to try to lead, to be inspired from your personal integrity to some extent, and make this leading in your adventures you're going to have after your education. And I hope for you that it's going to work out, because we need that. Do you understand? Is this clear? Do you feel that? Yeah, this. Okay, thank you very much. So, Harry, let's go to the questions.
Thank you very much, Jeroen.